For the very first time, welcome into Peyton's Play. I'm Meghan Payton here for episode 1. We've got a great show for you guys, a great slate of Super Wildcard Weekend games, some props that I'm going to throw at you, and most importantly, our first pro of Peyton's Play is going to be my dad, current Fox analyst and former head coach Sean Payton, joining us here very shortly in the show. I'm so excited to start this podcast. It's been in the works for a bit. The goal of Peyton's Play is to merge sports betting and sports media. Each week, we're going to go through different slate of games. We're going to give out our picks, our player props that we're going to be eyeing. But most importantly, we're going to have a guest on, aka a pro, every week who's an expert in their field. So that could be anyone from a player, a coach, a handicapper. There's so much going on in the world of sports betting, but still a lot of people who more know sports just from the traditional side. So I'm excited to merge this all. But without further ado, we've got wildcard weekend ahead, 6 games. So let's get into our picks. Six games on the slate for Super Wildcard Weekend. The first time in playoff history, by the way. These 6 games will be a rematch from the regular season. A few of these divisional games. First game up, we've got Seahawks at Niners. Kickoff is at 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Niners are a 9.5-point favorite, and the total's at 42. I like Niners to cover 9.5. I know that's a high spread, especially for two teams that know each other well, both in the NFC West, play each other twice a year. But San Fran swept the Seahawks this season in both of their games, a combined margin of 48-20. Niners got the number 1 overall defense. They've got an incredible offense. Brock Purdy's getting the job done, but most importantly, they are the most complete team in the NFL. We'll get my dad's take here later, but he's mentioned before that he likes the Niners as a Super Bowl contender. I really like them. To me, when you've got weapons and you've got players like Christian McCaffrey, you've got the best tight end in George Kittle, and you've got receivers that you can rely on, whether that's Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel's back. I mean, they have so many players. It's like a Pro Bowl roster just in their team. These two teams have just not gone according to plan. You think about the Seahawks and the Niners preseason, Seahawks were one of the worst teams that we would have thought coming into the season. So you've got to give credit to head coach Pete Carroll and what they've done. Geno Smith with this offense. I don't think they get the job done against the Niners. I like Niners money line, and I'm going to lay the 9.5 points with San Fran. All right, next up on our Saturday slate, we've got Chargers at Jaguars. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Chargers are 2.5-point road favorite, and the total's at 47.5. This is my first upset pick of the wildcard weekend. I like Jags money line here. It's going to be a competitive game. This one I really think is interesting. The Jags quickly went from the worst team in the NFL to an AFC South division winner. That says a lot about their quarterback. I think it says a lot about head coach Doug Peterson. They've got talented offensive weapons. We're seeing improvement from Travis Etienne, wide receiver Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Trevor Lawrence is your franchise guy. With the coaching of Doug Peterson combined with what Lawrence is able to do, his pocket presence, his arm strength, his accuracy, I like Jags to come up and win this thing. They're going up against a Chargers team that has been solid, but they might be without their star wide receiver, Mike Williams. I mean, week 18, Brandon Staley made the decision to play his starters. Obviously, there was some criticism with that choice, but Mike Williams dealing with a back injury. We're told that he is going to be traveling with the team to Jacksonville. We're unsure if he's going to be playing. I think Jags get the job done at home. Duval. Next up on the slate, we have Miami Dolphins at Buffalo Bills. This is Sunday, first game on Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Bills are a 13.5-point favorite. The total's at 43.5. This is a tough game. We're dealing right now in Super Wildcard Weekend with a lot of quarterback issues. Tua Tagovailoa will not be playing. He's been ruled out, dealing with a concussion. Teddy Bridgewater also might not be playing with a thumb injury. I like Bills here. I mean, I like Bills money line. I don't know if I'm going to look at the spread here. I'm going to shy away from that right now. But you look at a Bills offense that's second in yards per game, second in points per game, first and third down. And then defensively, they're second in points allowed per game, their fifth run defense. I like what we're seeing out of Buffalo. This team's had to go through a lot, clearly with the major injury of safety DeMar Hamlin, who's making a great recovery. So that is positive news in Buffalo. These two teams know each other well. Unfortunately, Miami dealing with too many issues at quarterback. I don't think Skylar Thompson can get the job done here. I'm going to shy away from 13.5, but take Bills money line. Okay, we got three more games to talk about. Giants, Vikings, we got to get through these quick because we got props, and then we've got my dad, head coach Sean Payton, coming on later. But we've got Giants at Vikings, 4:30 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. Vikings are a 3-point favorite. The total's at 48.5. Second upset alert for me. Giants upset the Vikings here. Take Giants money line. Saquon Barkley to have a big game. That's how the Giants are going to win this thing, and that's how they almost won this thing last time during the regular season. Vikings got the win in the regular season, but you look at the box score between these two teams during that game, the Giants won. Saquon Barkley, if he can have a big game where he's carrying the ball over 20 times, the Giants win this thing. Vikings are also allowing the second most passing yards. So if we can get some improvement from Daniel Jones, the last two games he's throwing and completing at least 71% of his passes. I like Giants to upset Vikings here. All right, last up for our Sunday night game, we have Ravens at Bengals, another quarterback issue, kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. Bengals are a 9.5-point favorite, and the total's at 40.5. I like Bengals money line here, shying away from the spread. Another game with quarterback issues. Lamar Jackson not going to be playing. Tyler Huntley might not even be playing. This is the problem with Baltimore. They cannot stay healthy. Lamar Jackson, left knee injury. He went onto Twitter on Thursday explaining to us what was going on. The Bengals are hot right now, 8 wins in a row. Can we go against that? I mean, they just played the Ravens. They won 27-16 in their last game. I like Joe Mixon to have a big game. We'll talk about that as we get into our player props. 9.5 is too much for me to lay, so I'll just stick with Bengals money line here. And lastly, for Super Wildcard Weekend, we have our Monday night game kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. That's Cowboys at Bucs. Cowboys are a 2.5-point road favorite, and the total's at 45.5. I like Cowboys here. There's a lot of talk right now about Tom Brady, what he can do in the playoffs, and that's all correct. But Dallas is the better team. We can't forget and can't discredit what they've done. Bucs did beat the Cowboys early in the season. That was the game that Dak got hurt. And most importantly, that was before the Cowboys really started using running back Tony Pollard. We've seen what he's able to do with the combo of Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard, the defense with Micah Parsons. I like Cowboys to go and get the job done in Tampa. All right, that is it for our picks. We'll see if Sean Payton agrees with some of my thoughts, but let's jump into a couple player props right now. I think I've hammered this one into every show I've been on this week, but I'm looking at running back Joe Mixon, over 24.5 receiving yards. Mixon is having his worst year since his rookie season as a rusher, but his best as a pass catcher. And that's great because guess what? He's going to be going up against a Ravens run defense that's third in the league. You got to find a way to get the job done. He did so last 2 weeks. He's had over 40 receiving yards. One of those came against the Ravens. The week prior, he had over 30 receiving yards. I don't expect it to be much different. And this Ravens team, if they can stop the run, they can't stop the pass. Joe Mixon is a guy that's able to break through tackles with his strength, his ability to produce yards even after the catch. They're using him in the backfield. I think Mixon has a big game in the receiving end. Take over 24.5 receiving yards for Mixon. All right, Trevor Lawrence, over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I said I like the Jags to win this thing. Well, how are they going to do so? They're going to have to do so with Trevor Lawrence. Yes, when they played each other last time, they were able to run the ball, but Trevor Lawrence also had a huge game against the Chargers early in the regular season. Trevor Lawrence threw for 3 passing touchdowns against this Chargers defense. And though Trevor Lawrence has not had 2 passing touchdowns the last 3 games, he's due for a big one against LA. And that's the only way I see this Jaguars team winning this game. He's got the arm strength. He's got the accuracy. He's going to have to get quick release out of there. I'll see what Sean Payton says about this. My dad, I know he's got some thoughts on Trevor Lawrence. I think he has a big game. I'm taking 1.5 passing touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence. All right, enough of me talking. Let's get a pro's opinion. It is time to welcome my dad, Fox analyst, and former/future coach Sean Payton.
Can you hear me all right?
Welcome in. Welcome into Peyton's Play, Dad. Thank you for being our very first guest.
I feel like I've got my coffee here. I kind of woke up before the alarm even went off. I was excited for you. And I've been listening to some of your discussion. I agree with some of it I disagree with. But you know how it is. We're family, so we can kind of just throw it out there. Congratulations, though. I'm really proud of you. and glad to be on.
Well, thank you for coming on. The merge of sports betting and sports media is the goal of this podcast. And we obviously, in the sports betting world, angle things with spreads and lines. But at the end of the day, there's nothing better than having a expert in the game itself that sometimes can be a bit smarter than what Vegas and the odds have it. So Super Wildcard Weekend, 6 games on the slate, all rematches from the regular season. Which matchup is most intriguing to you?
Well, look, I really didn't know until you just said that they were all rematches. So certainly it's pretty common in Wild Card Weekend to have division teams playing each other. It happens every year. Um, so I think the matchups to me that have the most intrigue are two down in Florida, and that would be Jacksonville, the game you were just talking about, hosting the Chargers, and the Chargers have been on a roll lately, and so have Jacksonville. So you have two teams, I think, playing well heading into this tournament. Two teams with elite quarterbacks. So that's an exciting game. I think Dallas traveling to Tampa Bay. Obviously, there'll be a lot of attention on that. That's a Monday night game. Um, and I think it gets more interesting because the Cowboys didn't play their best last week when they played Washington. So uh, those are two games that I think are very interesting. And I also think the Giants traveling to Minnesota, um, that's an interesting matchup. I feel like in the other three, I have a hard time seeing Miami going into Buffalo and winning without their starting quarterback or possibly without their starting or second string quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. I have a hard time seeing Seattle go into San Francisco and as good a season as the Seahawks have had and Pete Carroll and his staff have had. San Francisco, I think, is too much for them. And I think Baltimore has the same challenge that Miami has. You know, they're not playing with their starting quarterback. And yesterday I watched a couple shows, and certainly a lot of what they do offensively goes through Lamar Jackson. He's going to be out for that game. So I think Cincinnati, Buffalo, and San Francisco are home teams that I'm not going to say win easily, but I think those games won't have the same intrigue as the other three because honestly, and I'm not very good. I mean, I'm doing pretty good with my pick'em segment at Fox, but I think the Giants can beat the Vikings. I don't know that they will, but we're going to turn the set on and watch the game and find out. I think Minnesota, if they button a few things up defensively and they have that great home field advantage, it's a tough place to play. Um, and then the other two games that are in Florida, Jacksonville, again, hosting the Chargers and Tampa Bay hosting the Cowboys. I feel like those three games that I mentioned have a chance to go either way.
Let's stick on Cowboys Bucs. How much do you buy into the narrative of Tom Brady in the playoffs, playoff Lenny? Does that impact this game?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. Look, there's a physical skill set that you deal with when you play against a guy like Tom Brady. He's an amazing player. He still has the arm talent. You saw it in the last couple of weeks, but you're also battling his mental mindset, and he's such a strong-willed competitor that it'd be hard to explain what practice this week would be like if you were really like a fly on the wall in the meetings and watching him in the huddle and watching him with his receivers and tight ends. We all know that in the playoffs, um, the intensity ratchets up a little bit and the focus goes up a little bit. It just kicks up. I think with Tom, whatever up is, and then it goes up a little bit higher, and so there's a confidence level. He's never lost to Dallas, and I think there's a little bit more pressure that falls on Dallas in this game. I think Tampa's playing a little bit with house money in that, they were struggling all year. Uh, a lot was made of the NFC South. Um, I mentioned this on the show a week ago, and I think this is pretty important relative to your program here. Um, since 1970, there have been six division winners that were at 500, 8-8, or worse. Every 4 or 5 years you have one of these divisions that everyone kind of trashes. And now it's hard to be right at 500 with the games at 17. So 9-8, 8-9, what have you. But those 6 teams that were 500 or worse in their opening round, all right, were 4-2. And so we faced one of them, in 2010, we had an 11 win Saints team. We went up to a 7-9 Seahawk team and lost. We had a lead early, but the team like Tampa, who gradually found a way to fight and claw and battle to win the NFC South, there there's less pressure on that team than the team like Dallas that, man, they had a fantastic year. And their team, Mike McCarthy, those guys played 5 games without their starting quarterback, ended up going 4-1. So I think there's a lot of intrigue in that game. They played each other, ironically, to start the season. So one of these 2 teams will have opened with either Tampa or Dallas and then finished with either Tampa or Dallas.
That's a good
But
point.
I just think that people will be. There's a lot of pressure on Dak. He's turned the ball over a little bit more maybe than we're accustomed to. How does he handle that? I see him playing well, I think, in this game. I think the Cowboys will come out and play well. The concern I have for Tampa is their inability to run the football. I think the teams that have beaten Dallas have had success in a little bit more balance in their offense. So I worry about a one-dimensional Tampa game plan relative to Dallas's pass rush. So I think if they could get anything in the running game going, Tampa Bay, that is, surely that'll help their cause. But a lot there in this matchup. I'm anxious to watch that one.
Tampa Bay 32nd in run offense this year, going up against a Dallas run offense, 8th in the league. All right, I want to switch gears. Let's talk a little bit of player props. I was talking before you came on about Trevor Lawrence, and my thought was if the Jags are going to win this game and upset the Chargers, which I actually have them doing, I think Trevor Lawrence is going to have a big game. When they played earlier in the season, Trevor Lawrence had 3 passing touchdowns. So in the player prop world, his line's at 1.5 for passing touchdowns. So I'm taking the over. So I expect Lawrence to have 2 or more passing touchdowns. What do you think for Lawrence, and what's the key for the Jags to win this thing?
Well, listen, I love that we're talking about Trevor Lawrence. I'm not as familiar with player props. Like, I thought that meant just give Trevor his props. But
Right?
I think this. I think Doug Peterson, his staff, that team has been fun to watch. And we don't get a chance to always see him on a national stage. In fact, this will be the first time in the history of the organization that the Jaguars will have a home primetime playoff game. It's never happened before. So I expect that to be exciting and electric for those fans. Uh, I think he's really. You could make the argument the last 8 or 9 weeks of the season he's playing better than any quarterback in the NFL, statistically speaking.
Yeah.
And I saw the numbers. So I like your 2 or more touchdown passes, um, and I do see him playing well in this game. Um, you know, the Chargers are getting a little healthier on defense, and
Yeah.
so this could be a high scoring game also.
Yeah, I think if the Jags do win this, it seems like it's going to have to be high scoring. And it is worth mentioning, like right before you came on, I was saying that the Jags did hand the Chargers their biggest loss of the season, 38-10. Justin Herbert, though, wasn't
Yeah.
fully healthy in that game. So, I mean, these are 2 elite quarterbacks who, just from a coach perspective, like, how do you compare these 2 guys?
Well, look, there's a lot of similar comps. I mean, they're height, weight, size prospects that are prototype. They both have outstanding arm strength. I think they're both um, guys that have had success in college. Um, I see some similarities these are 2 of the future quarterbacks that we're going to see for the next 10 years. So I have a feeling we're going to look back on this playoff game and probably see these two in more of these playoff games since they're both in the AFC. But both of them have bright futures, and both of them have the ability to not carry a team on their shoulders. That's not the right word, but both of them have the ability to be part of a Super Bowl run. And I think that's exciting for both those teams.
Yeah, I totally like your thoughts on this, being that offensive mind. All right, random question here. Are you going back to coaching next year?
Random question. Well, listen, there's a couple thoughts to that. Yeah, I think there's a chance that happens, but then there's also a chance that I stay at Fox. There's been a few teams reach out for permission. So what does that mean? That means that I can visit with them on the phone, and then beginning next week have a chance to sit down and interview with a few of these teams. So I think it's kind of at the early stage where I do have an interest in. There's certain things you miss when you're not coaching. I love the job I have at Fox, but there's that feeling when you win a game on Sunday, and you know how that is afterwards. It's just you're exhausted from the work week and everything your players have done, the coaching staff, the whole organization is focused on, and then you get a grade each weekend, and it's pretty special when you win. So I think we got a little bit more time here to figure that out. And you've got a wedding coming up, and I know the cost of that wedding, so I might have to go back to coaching to help pay for this wedding. So that's also kind of spinning around in my brain.
Fox, that's Fox's alert. Maybe he was trying to get a pay raise there. All right, I had a feeling that you weren't going to give us a big answer here. So since you don't know maybe where you're going, I'll tell you where Vegas has you going. And Vegas, by the way, typically pretty smart.
Oh, stop.
We got a little graphic here. According to some sportsbook, let it be known that you can't technically bet on this on a lot of sites, but Cardinals have the shortest odds right now, plus 250. Then we've got the Rams at plus 400. So that means that Vegas thinks that you're going to end up at the Cardinals, most likely. Then they've got the Rams, then the Saints, the Colts, the Broncos, the Cowboys, and then the Chargers we're seeing at 10-1. What do you think of this graphic?
Yeah. Well, first off, in fairness, the bottom two shouldn't be on there. They have coaches and they're in the playoffs. So I understand. I understand the rumor mill and all of that. You're missing Carolina. All right, Vegas.
I know that I was surprised by that.
If we're trying to be, if we're just trying to be complete here, and then the last box we're missing is Fox. Like what's the odds that he just goes back to Fox and pays for Meghan's wedding the next year? Just kind of put it on a credit card. Anyway, listen, I think it's kind of cool the industry you're in, and we're in those early stages where there's a lot of products if you're looking to wager, and obviously we want people to do so. Where they can afford to lose if they're going to lose, because look, Vegas is set up to make money, not to pay money. So you have to be sharp. But no, I think there's a lot of things, a lot of different prop bets that we're used to, maybe only on Super Bowl Sunday, right. Heads or tails. Who's going to score the first touchdown? There's all these different bets, and we're starting to take that and bring it into so many other elements of our sport, which is exciting.
Prop bets, Super Bowl prop bets. Where's Sean Payton going to coach next year? Vegas has it all. All right. On a serious note, I know that there's a lot that factors into your decision, whether you're going to be going to Fox, whether you're going to a new team. You've mentioned owner/management and how important that is to you. We've talked before. I've heard you talk about quarterback. And what I think, though, is interesting is these divisions. You look at a team like the Broncos in the AFC West, like that's a tough division. You're playing the Chiefs 2 times a year. Then you look at a division like the NFC South, Carolina, or you look at an AFC South. Both of those divisions, for lack of better words, just haven't been as successful. How much does division itself play into your decision?
That's a great question because you do anywhere you go as a player or coach, you look forward to that opportunity, but you also want to win. And so there are certain divisions that are stronger than others. I I think that the interesting thing about the AFC West is, and I don't know that it's interesting, but it's challenging, is yeah, you've got Andy Reid, you've got the Chiefs, and you got Patrick Mahomes. Those guys aren't going anywhere anytime soon, you know. And then the Chargers, you know, Herbert, you know, uh, he's going to be their franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future. And so those are challenges also. Sometimes you look at it and say, hey, if a team like Denver wants to get where they want to go, it's got to go through those, especially Kansas City. And then when you go to the South, I think we saw it with Doug Peterson. We saw it with Jacksonville. Their path to winning the division happened immediately, year one.
Yeah.
And here they are. We're talking about them. They're playing. I think the NFC South changes the landscape a lot if Brady leaves Tampa Bay, like a lot of people expect him to. Who knows? But if he does, the thing that's unique about that NFC South is you would say all four teams are kind of in a quarterback transition. Like, I don't know that any of us could point to and say, here's the starting quarterback for New Orleans or Atlanta or Tampa, or for that matter, Carolina. Not taking into account, free agency, the college draft. There's a lot that can take place, but all four teams are in a little bit of a transition. That just means you have a chance to win maybe a little quicker. I think the AFC has probably a little bit more of a lead relative to quarterbacks. When you look at Burrow, we've already talked about Herbert. We've already talked about Mahomes. You know, when you look at the quarterbacks in the AFC, I think you can point to, and I'm not even talking about Lamar Jackson, who's not going to be healthy to play. We're not even hitting on, all of them. But I think it's a little bit more talented in the AFC at that position than in the NFC. Josh Allen at Buffalo, and so I think it's something you look at. But ultimately, I keep getting back to that. You know, one of the things that I would share with you or anyone else, you have a good job if you enjoy being at work with people you enjoy being around, and it's something that I had 16 years of in New Orleans with Mickey and Mr. Benson, the late Mr. Benson, Miss Gail Benson, Dennis Lauscha, all those people that you see on a daily basis, you enjoy being around. You probably have a good job. And the other end of that is not so good. So I think that still factors in as number one, and then you deal with the division after that.
All right, so it was reported that you'll have your first official in-person interview with the Denver Broncos on Tuesday. We know the Cardinals have also gotten permission, the Texans as well. So walk me through. I don't know why. It's really funny to me to think of like you Tuesday morning, like putting on like a tie, like getting ready to like go have your meeting and your interview. Like, what does that process actually look like Tuesday morning when you're meeting with the Broncos owner?
I think it's most importantly a chance to, get to know one another and get to know their organization. I'm sure there'll be a few different members of their team, and then discuss topics that are relative or important, that are relatively important to Denver specifically. What they're looking for, what I see, and I know this. It'll be a lot different than the first time around. When I interviewed to go to New Orleans or Green Bay or some of those earlier opportunities, man, you have a whole presentation. You're
That's what I'm saying. Do you have a presentation?
Well, no, it's different. I think it's going
Yeah.
in with the way I think the way you want to build a program, how you see doing that, organizing your coaching staff, who are you interested in hiring, um, understanding there are coaches on the other end there in Denver waiting, and 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 having a chance possibly to visit with some of them. Um, I I think a lot of it's dictated um, by the ownership group coming in and spending time with them. There'll be questions, but I think it's probably not as exciting uh, as you might think. If you sat there for a minute, you might say, "All right, I've seen enough. I'm going to go home. Tell me how it goes."
All right,
um,
give me the Spark Note version. Give me the Spark Note version later. When do
yeah,
you
yeah.
expect to kind of come to a decision?
Oh, I don't know. I think in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll probably have a little bit more clarity here as to those teams. I'm sure there's a sense of urgency that they have, and and I think everyone right now is interviewing their 6, 7 candidates. Trying to be
Yeah.
real thorough and go through that process. So I would imagine within the month.
Most importantly, we hear doggies Murphy and the Fran in the background. Do they get an opinion?
Yeah, no, they don't. Murphy was barking because he wants to go for his walk, and so
He's ready
I
for
think
his
he was
walk.
barking. But he was barking at you because he said you only said this would be 15 minutes.
Well, we spent a lot of time on Trevor Lawrence, and we spent a
I'm
lot of
kidding
time on
you.
this Tampa team. We had to get to the fun stuff. I had a lot of people in my Twitter comments saying that. All right, these were the questions that I had to ask. But I'm
No,
excited. I'm really
those are
really
good
thankful that you came
questions.
on here. We
No,
appreciate you
those are good.
coming on and dealing with our graphics and our odds of where you're ending up. It was great to have you as our first guest here at Peyton's Play, and I'm excited to see what the future looks like, and to see where I guess we could say we end up next season. But thank you as always, Dad. I know a lot of people respect you as a coach, but most importantly, thank you for being a great dad.
Thank you for being a great daughter. I'm proud of you, and I'm really glad and happy you invited me on your first segment. Wasn't too difficult. I always say when you used to, like, whenever you've interviewed me in the past, it was always more challenging because as a parent, you're focused on, like, all right, is she asking the right questions? Is she, it's like you want to help her on that end, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I got to answer the question too. She just asked me. So it's a little bit more disarming when the questions come from you, and you do a great job. And have a good rest of your day and weekend. I'm sure I'll see you here soon.
Yeah, thank you. Go give Murphy a walk. Thank you. That is Fox analyst, aka former slash maybe future head coach Sean Payton, and my dad. Thank you for coming on Peyton's Play. All right, that wraps up episode 1 of Peyton's Play. I'm excited for this weekly content. We're going to have a different slate of games. We've got the rest of the football season coming up here, playoffs. We'll go through more props. We'll switch gears to NBA once football's over. And every week, we'll have a different pro who's an expert in their own field coming on to give us their thoughts and opinions. I appreciate all who've joined in on Peyton's Play. You can subscribe, hit the like button, do all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube. We'll have new episodes for you weekly.